Hey everyone, welcome to the Roadmap, Benzinga's NFT show. We got a good one for you today. We are doing an interview with a project that you have probably heard of, a big story from last year, and could potentially be a big comeback story for 2023. Stay tuned. We've got an interview with Pixelmon CEO Giulio coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere. This is the Roadmap. All right, everyone. As I said, another exciting interview on today's episode. We are talking all things Pixelmon, a collection you probably heard of last year. We'll dive into what's in the future for this project and how it is coming back. I am so excited to welcome on today's episode Giulio, the CEO of Pixelmon and co-founder of Liquid X. Giulio, welcome to the Roadmap. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm well. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. So excited to talk to you and hear more about Pixelmon, right? We heard this story last year, got a ton of publicity, both good and bad, and we are here to find out what's going on with Pixelmon and what is next for this exciting project. Before we dive into Pixelmon, just wondered if you could give our viewers a little bit of background about yourself. How did you get started in the world of cryptocurrency and NFTs prior to Pixelmon?
Oh, let's jump straight into it. Name's Giulio Xiloyannis. I've been to be very, very straightforward, in the world of Web3 actively for just about a year now. But passively, and by passively, I mean as an investor, and an investor mostly on the angel side. So I've been angel investing in projects since 2018. But before that, and really what I've been up to in my life so far, I've been a what you can call a tech founder or entrepreneur. I started off my career towards around 2010, 2011 in investment banking and the finance side of things, but pretty quickly realized it was more fun to be on the founder side. And so I moved to Southeast Asia. I moved to Malaysia and Singapore in 2012. And joined as a co-founder a team that was launching a e-commerce venture called Zalora. Zalora was a 8-year journey from inception to IPO, 10-year journey in total for me. And what I did for most of my career. In between, I did as I said, I moved into angel investing. I went back to my venture capital origins for a while until in early 2021. With my co-founder Kendrick Wang, we decided to launch Liquid X, which is in essence a VC with a studio and a game development studio placed behind it. As a VC, we take majority stakes in IPs that we believe are financially and creatively viable. And then leveraging our studio capabilities, we develop upon it and try and create value for ourselves and the holders of those projects. We focus very much on Web3 GameFi projects. So we've got 2 projects under our wings at this point in time. One is Pixelmon, as you said, and the other one is Anime Metaverse. And yeah, it's been a big pivot from, as I like to say, selling shoes on the e-commerce side of things. But a very fun one, and one towards an industry that had been fascinating me, as we said, since 2018. But I couldn't enter actively in as I was wearing the co-founder hat in a sizable organization with a couple of thousand employees that needed to be taken to the right point of stability before I could go on and have fun with the next venture. But yeah, that's a little bit of background on myself.
Love it. What a great background story. We always love hearing, where these CEOs, these founders of projects kind of got their start, how that shift to Web3 happened. So Pixelmon launched last year. and Liquid X, the company that you co-founded, bought Pixelmon. So walk us through, what went into that decision. You could have bought, numerous Web3 companies, NFT collections or projects, and you and your team decided on Pixelmon. Why Pixelmon?
Well, I think the shortest answer to that is because we love risk. And in essence, but now to go into the long answer to that, as I said, we had, and me and my co-founder had known each other since 2014. So we'd worked together as co-investors. We'd worked together as mentor and mentee, and shifting those hats from one to the other over the years. And anyways, in 2020, at the end of 2020, we decided to set up LiquidX. And at that point in time, in Q4 2020, I think we defined what LiquidX would be about. And it would be about building great game and content-oriented, so entertainment-oriented products with a Web3 angle to them. This said, we realized early on that our key strengths as founders didn't lie in the IP ideation side of things. Of course, we like to think of ourselves as somebody who can ideate IP, but the reality is what we had a proven track record on was raising funds and managing teams. So with that in mind, we said, let's raise funds, build teams, and then acquire our first IP. And position ourselves and position LiquidX as that real partner to projects that helps projects and partners with founders and helps them really put a gear or two more in their engines and go faster. Now, if you take that approach, and then in Q1, we started putting the word out there, we're here to take majority stakes, we're ready to invest, we're ready to take risk, and we're ready to work alongside people. And we were introduced, as you can imagine, to a lot of projects. We had contacts in the VC space, many that made those introductions. One of those contacts in the VC space introduced Pixelmon. Now, Pixelmon in that space kind of had that characteristic of being the most undervalued, highest potential project that we spoke with. We joined that conversation, I think it was late March, just after the mint, with a lot of skepticism because the news was already out. All those photos and images of Kevin were flying around. But a lot of things proved to be, let's say, not aligned to what the PR narrative was. And in essence, in simple words, the money was there. There hadn't been a hard rug pull. The intention to actually build a great product was there. The idea and the game design idea was strong, but at the same time, because of the news out there, and because let's be frank, this was a founder with great marketing, communication, and ideation abilities, but still didn't have a lot of experience in terms of execution under his belt. So let's say execution-wise, there was a gap. PR-wise, there was, as an understatement, let's put it a gap to fill. And at the same time, there were a lot of resources in the project and a lot of attention towards it. I mean, this chat between myself and you now is testament to it. And if you want to position yourself early on as the partner to projects that can really put those extra gears in projects, well, what better way than to pick up Pixelmon and turn it around to position yourself? Now, take another side of it was the risk. Of course, there's a financial risk involved in the transaction, but we were obviously ready to take that risk. And to be very transparent, many projects in the Web3 space, even if they have stronger reputations from a PR standpoint than what Pixelmon had in March 2021 or 2022, they still carry a lot of risk. So the financial risk for us was not that much of a consideration. There was another risk involved, which was actually our biggest consideration, was that one of us would have to go full time into this because it really needed that kind of attention and focus. But being transparent, and here comes the subjective side of the equation, I'd fallen in love with this game design idea. I've fallen in love with this idea of building a monster hunting and collecting game with Web3 and true gamer ownership capabilities. And I wanted to do that. So let's say the stars aligned. The risk to reward equation made a lot of sense. The project was something we wanted to work on. Went for it.
Love it. So the risk reward you talked a lot about, on your end and your team's end, Giulio. So one of the big storylines we had last year, right, was that when Pixelmon was released, the artwork came out and a lot of people felt wronged by Pixelmon. The project was kind of laughed at. How do you and your team kind of right the ship and get users back into the ecosystem and convince them that, hey, we're building this for the long term. We're here. We took the project over. Join us for the future.
Well, look, I think if I were to put it in my own words and a point of view, Pixelmon was a great idea that failed in its first execution step in February 2022. At that point in time, what we had to do, and at least in my head, what I had to do when I started first in an undoxed way, and why was it undoxed was because an M&A transaction takes time. And there was around 2 months of work that was going on before we could actually ink serious paper, where I decided to still work on the project and start, get things going. But I did so in an undoxed way until we signed the paperwork. But what I had to do was essentially flip the equation. I had to go from failed on execution to this needs to be the most trusted project in Web3 on execution standpoint. So what you want to deliver on and over-deliver on is execution, then the key word to execution is not hype, it's not big deliveries, it's not one big thing, one big action, it's consistency. What you need to do is actually deliver constantly, one step at a time, every day, and keep doing so, and get that user base used to that. So we shied away from any type of hype-driven move or, let's say, price-boosting move, and instead focused on steady, slow, upwards delivery. And that meant everything from just giving the community an output. So I basically started interacting with the community for, at the time, was 3 hours a day on live written AMA. It then tuned down as for a few months. I had to do it 3 hours a day. Then it tuned down, and then we had to over-deliver on everything. So the first thing, of course, that will immediately come to mind is what did they fail on? It failed on art. So art has to be over-delivered. I frankly believe that Pixelmon currently is the best creature NFT collection in Web3. It is a collection of 68 animated with unique sound designed to each one of them, super high poly NFTs. I mean, the 68 characters, each of them is amazing in the way it was designed, and professionally designed by with what essentially is standard top of class AAA cinematic trailer video game art. So that was our first step, but it was only the first of many, and we've been over-delivering on that roadmap for all of 2022. We delivered trainers that nobody expected, so the avatars. We delivered super high poly serum art. We delivered a whole game theory framework. We rebuilt the entire marketing framework and lore framework of the series and then of the game, etc., etc. So it's standard, and it is being there still now. I have a personal KPI. Any question that is asked directly of me in our Discord and where I'm tagged, I answer within 24 hours. Whoever asks.
So, after this artwork came out, Giulio, one of the storylines and maybe the positives that happened was we got this character called Kevin, right? So Kevin became this meme. He became this, kind of face of the project, right? A lot of people rush to buy him. What do you do with Kevin now, right? You try to rework this artwork, make the project, look better, build it for the future. But how do you maintain a little bit of that memeability with Kevin while moving forward? What happens to him?
Look, frankly, between me and you, Chris, not between me and you, between me, you, and your entire audience, Kevin was one of the literally, when I understood and looked deeply at Kevin, this was during the chats whether we jump LiquidX jumps into this or not. Does LiquidX buy this or not? When I started understanding the way the public was reacting to Kevin, I said, this alone should be a reason to buy this project. The value and the IP value of that character is infinite, because if you can build a project that is strong enough on execution and delivery to be able to confidently make fun of itself with its own meme, and this is not certainly what happened in February. What happened in February was sheer luck of managing to pull out a Kevin and a meme or a memeable character out of that, let's say, poor art delivery. But Kevin now for us is truly valuable IP, because Kevin is at the level of, let's say, an Azuki Grail or a golden ape, is an icon of Web3. And if you can turn around the perception of the project into one of the strongest execution projects there is in Web3, then Kevin becomes your biggest asset, because it becomes your Web3 symbol. As you can see from the image you're sharing, for that reason, we decided that Kevin is the only character that, while we placed it in that super high poly environment and that podium, stayed voxelated. And we're going to keep it voxelated in the game too. In addition to that, Kevin is already showing its value, and this is not just about the price of the NFT on OpenSea and elsewhere being much higher than mint price, and certainly higher than the floor price. It's around 8 to 9x the floor price. But also, Kevin is already like the star of our merchandising line. We are already working on a nano block or / so-called Lego block Kevin merchandise for Web3. And Kevin is very important for that reason. As you can see, there are two types of Kevin. There is the old original background Kevin, and there is the high poly background Kevin. Holders decided themselves whether they wanted one background or the other. We gave the choice at that point in time. I personally prefer our super high poly background. It's kind of a way to put him on a nicer podium and shine him out. But yeah, Kevin is the symbol of this game, and if we keep delivering the way we're delivering, we can portray Kevin with pride as a symbol of our past, and also a symbol of how Web3 has evolved and is able to move past certain moments in its history and still stand tall and deliver great products.
I love that. Giulio, did you say Kevin merch? I mean, am I going to get a Kevin Christmas sweater for the holidays next year? Like, I'm excited now if we're getting Kevin merch from the project. This is very exciting. And I love that comment there, right? Like, kind of keeping the past, but also, showing the future and that evolution of Web3. One of the things I mentioned at the top of the show, right, is we're seeing a lot of NFT projects get this momentum back during this, mini bull market we've got going on. We're hearing a lot of comeback stories, right? Collections that were really popular in 2022. And now we're seeing, the teams really work on building and showing off the future. So to me, I see Pixelmon, which had, a lot of attention around it. Now we have new ownership. I see a comeback story building, right? Do you think that Pixelmon is a comeback story for 2023? How would you kind of, word that?
Well, look, it really depends on what you consider a comeback story. In my books, this isn't a comeback story until we deliver a game, and that game is profitable in Web 2 terms, meaning it can collect more money and revenue from Web 2 players. So not players that are there to earn, not players that are there to just display their NFTs, but real players, gamers, to cover its costs. That's when, let's say, that's the Giulio KPI. That's the lowest end of that KPI. That at least it's profitable in Web 2 terms, and then hopefully we make a blockbuster out of it. If you think about where the project came from, I mean, this project, when we picked it up, was at 0.12 ETH during bull market. Around a couple of months ago, it hit 0.75 ETH during bear market, with on top of it another 2 collections airdropped to the holders, which were respectively the serums worth just above half an ETH, and the trainers worth around what a Pixelmon used to be worth, so 0.12, 0.15 ETH at the floor. So if you look at it from an investor standpoint, this is already a 7-8x return at that point in time compared to when we stepped in. So what is a comeback story? It really hinges on that. My personal comeback story is this is gonna be a highly profitable game that is loved by gamers, independent of the technology it uses. And then, thanks to the technology it uses, it helps onboard masses onto Web3. That's the real comeback. And that comeback, probably, to be transparent with you, Chris, because of how high that bar is probably a 2024 bar, because the game will need to be live for a while and kicking marketing-wise for a while. But yeah.
Love that transparency, Giulio, and I know that we're rooting for you and Pixelmon, with this comeback. I want to talk a little bit about the team that you've assembled to push Pixelmon forward. So on January 1st, I saw you put out a Twitter thread, and you mentioned that the team now has 100 years of AAA game development experience, just among the top 6 team members. Talk a little bit about that, right? We hear a lot about AAA games and a lot of companies, trying to push forward in the gaming space. How does the experience of your team set Pixelmon apart?
Well, look, I think more than setting it apart, and I'll take a step backwards, and let's be transparent on, I have no game development experience. I've never done before the Pixelmon adventure and Liquid X adventure in the last year and a half, built a video game. And what I have built is I've built tech companies, I've raised funds for tech companies, and I've built great teams around. Teams I'm very proud of. So the first thing I needed to do was essentially compensate that lack of topic experience versus horizontal experience of my own. And it meant bringing really minds that knew what good is in the sector. Minds that ensured that, one, we set the bar at the right height, meaning high. And we didn't reinvent wheels in building this game because we don't have the time to reinvent wheels. So that meant understanding, first of all, how game studios are structured from an organizational standpoint, and then filling those structural places. Now, in terms of filling it, what essentially that initial investigation in the first half of last year took me to understanding that ultimately I needed to fill 4 key positions. I needed the creative, non-art, but the creative, pure gaming creativity side of things. So let's call that the game designer, the lean game designer. You can call it, in certain areas, it's called the game director. Now, for that position, we hired Pascal Lubin. Pascal Lubin has worked in Ubisoft, has worked in Blizzard, and in both places as a lead game designer, has 27 years of game design experience. He worked on Unreal Tournament. He worked on Splinter Cell. He worked on hunting games, where there is a little bit of a touch of in common with Pixelmon, even if in his games previously was hunting real animals from our real world. And really, most of all, he made, in the last 5 to 10 years, he made his key proposition free-to-play game monetization. He's taught university courses on it. And that is particularly important as to also the revenue model, and that is both important to holders and to the company and to our final objective we were talking about earlier. The second pillar you need to fill is the creative visual side of things. So the second pillar was the creative visual side of things. So basically the art director. The art director, we needed an art director. So look at where we were in time. We had already released the second wave of Pixelmon art. We had a great character art studio out of Japan that is working with us exclusively on the Pixelmons. We're quite confident of our character art. What we need is a guy who's able to take that to very strong technical level. So how do we display these 68 plus evolutions, so 200 plus characters on mobile beautifully? And second, needs to be very strong on environment art. So how do we build a world? And so we went and brought on board Stefan Ivanov. Stefan is a former art director at Electronic Arts in the UK. He worked on games such as Riders Republic, Mortal Kombat. He was the art director on the last two Formula One games. Has a lot of experience on open world building and a lot of experience on Mortal Kombat, combat character building, and adapting them across platforms. Most of all, he's a technically oriented art director with 16 years of experience starting as a developer on the Unreal Engine side of things. So that was our second pillar. Before moving to my third one, I'll let you fire any questions on these two, Chris, you might have.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got this great team. I want to touch base. You mentioned, some of these people with the experience, that gaming model, right? We hear a lot about like mobile games and the freemium model and the in-app purchases and stuff. We also hear a lot about onboarding new users into Web3, right? So Pixelmon right now, we have these NFTs that people need to buy. How will Pixelmon, how could they help onboard new users to Web3? Is that part of the gaming push here?
Yes, it is indeed part of the gaming push. Now, look, one of the things that this is prior to LiquidX itself. When I look at a lot of projects, particularly the early projects that launched NFT collections, gaming NFT collections, there was a contradiction in their strategy. The contradiction lies in the fact that 70+% of revenue in the gaming space comes from free-to-play monetization. At the same time, though, all of these projects are launching essentially NFT gated ecosystems. And those NFTs are super high price, like usually they're 10x the price at least of a normal video game, even the ones that are still gated, which is the old monetization approach. So somewhere there is a contradiction. How are you ever going to get big masses of players on a game when your entire proposition is NFT holder exclusivity? So the thing that we needed to do was split the two. Holders need to benefit when the game gets as many players as possible. The game needs to be oriented to onboarding as many players as possible to it. So we build our game as a free-to-play custodial wallet game. This means that not only it is free to play, but you don't need a Web3 wallet. You don't need to even be Web3 onboarded to play the game. We will create a wallet in the backend for you. And only when you want to access certain specific features of the game, including selling some of the assets you found in the game, so access the peer-to-peer marketplace of the game, do you then need to register a non-custodial wallet, so a personal wallet to the game. So if you take this from another standpoint, what does the game do? The game markets itself as a Web2 normal game. As gamers progress, if the game is successful, gamers will have an increasing economic incentive and will be increasingly invested into a product to actually onboard to Web3. And in that way, through bringing the onboarding to Web3, not at the beginning, not as a blocker to the funnel of onboarding of a gamer, but as a reward once the gamer is already invested in the game, do you then actually promote Web3 to gamers? By then rerouting some of the benefits and profits of this game to holders as IP holders of the assets in the game making essentially the game a decentralized ownership game. Do you then reward the initial backers and creators of this IP, which is our community?
Awesome. Giulio, I want to talk a little bit about what's next, right? So we've already seen, several exciting updates from Pixelmon. You mentioned, the avatars, and we've got some gameplay footage. We've got some updates from you in that January 1 thread. What are some more things that people can look forward to with Pixelmon in 2023?
Well, 2023 is a big year. A big part of last year, even if we did deliver some things on art and some things on gameplay footage, really most of it was building foundations, putting this team together, figuring out exactly what we're going to do from an economic model standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of thinking and brainstorming last year. This year, I would say it's 99% execution. Now, as of next week, the first cohorts of selected holders will actually start testing a vertical slice of our game, which is a combat vertical slice, the one we've been sharing the gameplay footage of. They can do so in a multiplayer approach, fighting against each other. In no way I'm saying that's a perfect game. I actually say that's not a fun game yet. But the testing process by which they go through is part of finding the fun and building on it. It is in polishing phases of that vertical slice. And the vertical slice already gives them an idea of what the combat experience will be. We're going to be increasing those cohorts slowly but surely, bringing in a few hundreds of our holders in the testing ranks over time, and delivering them to that cohort and keeping it, as it grows, every 2 weeks, bringing them our new build, because we work on 2-week sprints on the gaming side of things. In parallel, we're developing the wider alpha. So as a vertical slice that only focuses on combat, there is naturally a wider world being developed which focuses on exploration, social aspects of the game, et cetera, which we hope to be able to start displaying at one of the big NFT events later this year. We're thinking about Singapore 2049, but we haven't firmed up dates and progress yet. We are in between also working on a bunch of holder benefits. We have holder adventures, which is essentially a gamification of the holder experience happening already as of next month and will be ongoing for the whole year. We have a badge system going out this year. We have our evolution tools, so a whole new batch of 68 creatures. So we're doubling our creature ranks in actually only a couple of months. They're going live. And before the end of the year, I also want to have evolution 3. So we're going to probably hit from currently 68 Pixelmon around 200 before the end of the year in terms of the species out there. And yeah, hopefully in that progress, then we get to a point where towards the end of the year, as we were expecting, we have an initial alpha of the game that is not just a vertical slice, but as I said, a alpha that allows you to experience all the major features that we have in mind for this game. So yeah, in short, that is what there is to it. A couple more. We owe a few airdrops to our holders, a land airdrop, and then probably within this year, governance token ecosystem. The governance token ecosystem will have come with the first, you could call it a DAO product. Essentially, we call it a DAT product, Decentralized Autonomous Tribes, for the 4 tribes in our game, our water, fire, air, and earth tribes, which will be the product through which certain types of decisions will be taken. Earlier, you were sharing a post from our Twitter about a decision on the evolution of Kevin and whether it should evolve or not. It has been actually decided that that decision is being remanded to being the first DAT decision for the water tribe that Kevin belongs to. So the token as a voting instrument and the DAT product itself, because it's not just going to be a show of hands or some bot on Discord as most DAOs work, but it's actually going to be a product that is integrated to the back end of the game and actually affects the game directly and independently. will be released this year.
Giulio, you just gave us a ton of information, a ton of exciting updates for 2023. So this last question may be a tough one, right? But we always like to ask founders and CEOs, right? So we're in 2023, it's January. What are you personally most excited about for Pixelmon in 2023? If you had to pick like one big thing.
I'm torn. So the thing that I look forward the most to is playing my game. Honestly, what I look forward to is unplugging all my socials, switching off my phone, literally locking my door. I've got a nice little kid at home, so locking my door is not always a possibility. But locking my door and sitting down and literally do what a gamer does, playing 12 hours straight of Pixelmon. But that is kind of like, it's also the obvious answer. If you're building a game, that's the obvious answer. What am I really looking for? What else could I throw out there that is maybe closer in the future and more immediately realistic? I'm looking forward to the evolution 2 of my favorite character, which is Tiki. The evolution 2 of Tiki should be released as early as March. So I've got that to look forward to in the first couple of months of this year before I can lock myself in and play my game until I'm bored of it.
Awesome. Well, Giulio, on behalf of Benzinga and the roadmap, we want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and share these exciting updates about Pixelmon. We look forward to following the progress of Pixelmon in 2023 and talking to you soon.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that does it for this interview. Again, shout out to Giulio from Pixelmon. Another exciting interview here on the roadmap. Make sure to subscribe to Benzinga's YouTube channel, smash that like, and stay tuned for more exciting content coming up next. Thanks, everyone.